Okay, now is the fun part of the video when we try and stack a bunch of books and hold them up for a thumbnail and hope they don't fall. So, oh no. Hey guys, it's Taylor and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I am so excited for today's video because we're doing a tag video, which I've been on YouTube since I was literally 13 years old. And back then I did makeup videos and we would do like get to know me tags and like favorite makeup product tags. And the fact that I'm now 23 and there's a book recommendation tag, I'm like, it's just nostalgic and I have to do it. So this tag was created by Steph Bohrer, I think that's how you say it, here on YouTube. She's one of the first book channels I actually ever even like found. And yeah, so she created this tag and it's basically just a series of questions that are going to give you my book recommendations, and that's pretty much it. So I have the questions here. I'll put them in the description box if you guys want to read them. And let's get on into the book recommendations tag. First question is a book that you tell people is your favorite, and I feel like this is so hard. I hate when people ask me, like, especially people I don't really know, like in real life. They'll be like, oh, you read, like, what's your favorite book? And I'm like, that's so hard because I feel like I have favorite books in like all different genres. I have favorite books in series. Like, it's not just like one book that like takes the cake. But when people are like, what's your favorite book? Like, what should I read? I always recommend and say Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This book is just so good and like heartbreaking. Like, I think there's just so many emotions that are in this book. Like, it is a romance, but there's also just like a deeper meaning behind the story. There's parts of it that are really sad. Like, I feel like anyone would probably enjoy this book. I also feel like it's like a good, like, faster paced book, kind of like Colleen Hoover. I feel like those get everyone into reading. I feel like this is kind of that same vibe. I don't want to say like it's an easy read, but it's an easier read, especially if you aren't into reading and you want to get into reading. I just absolutely love Archer's Voice. This basically just follows a girl who moves to a small town, so it's like a small town romance. She meets Archer, but Archer is kind of like hated on in this small town and everyone's just kind of mean to him, and she just wants to be nice to him. And there's just like a lot deeper that goes into it that I can't say because it'll be a spoiler, but it's so heartwarming and love the story. And also I do want to point out that that book has a disability representation in it. I'm not going to say what it is because that is a spoiler, but I absolutely love when there's just like those, like, I don't know how to say it, like when there's just representation of, I don't want to say minorities, but minorities essentially, whether it's a disability or cultures or races or whatever. I just feel like books need to be more diverse. So I love when I'm reading popular books that aren't just mainstream, you know. Okay, number 2 is a book that is your guilty pleasure. I'm going to say After by Anna Todd. I actually have not read this series in years, but let me explain why it's my guilty pleasure. After got me into reading back in literally middle school. I think I was 7th grade. I was like 11 years old. I had no business reading this, but I did on Wattpad, and it was like a Harry Styles fanfic. I was a huge One Direction girly. Like, this just kind of like started my love for like reading, and it's a guilty pleasure for me because I feel like I probably just like I just want to read it again, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like if you get into reading now and you've never read this and you read this, you're like, what the hell? Because it's not, I don't know, there's just something about the fact that I read this when it first came out on Wattpad when I was 11, and then I read it when it came out in book form, and then I watched the movies, which really sucked, by the way. And the fact that I still picture Harry Styles in it, like, there's just, it's just, yeah. Number 3 is a book that everyone loved but you didn't. I'm gonna put The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I had some more like really popular books that I could have like brought up, but I think this is one that's kind of like, it is popular, but it's not like book talk famous in a way. So I feel like I just see a lot of people recommend this, and I think it is actually a series. I stopped after this one because I obviously didn't really enjoy it. There wasn't anything like necessarily wrong with it. It's a small town romance, but I didn't feel any connection to the characters at all. I found myself pretty bored throughout the story, so I'm not really sure why everyone loves it. Like, nothing groundbreaking happened, so I'm just kind of confused. Number 4 is a book that you read the fastest. This is one of my most recent really fast reads. This is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. I literally read this in like a few hours, like the same day. I kind of just binge read it all freaking day long. It was so good, and it was a really fast read. It was my first mafia romance, and I really enjoyed it, and I will be picking up more of Sophie Lark's books. Number 5 is a book that deserves more hype. I'm putting The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I know that some people do talk about this, but I definitely don't think it's talked about nearly as much as I wish it was. I think this was such a cute book, and I just loved it. Basically, it follows two people who are sharing a flat, but they never have met in person. One of them works like night shift, one works day shift, so they literally like are always leaving. It's like a rotating door, but they are sharing a bed. Like it's like a really small apartment, so like they're sharing a bed but like not at the same time, and they communicate through post-it notes that they leave around the apartment, and then eventually obviously one day they're going to end up meeting. And I just feel like it was such a cute premise, and it was different. I feel like a lot of times romance stories are just kind of the same, especially if it's like an enemies to lovers or like small town romance. Like it can get very repetitive, so I think I enjoyed this so much because it's like a concept that I hadn't read before, and I really liked it. Next, we have a book that is becoming a movie/TV show, and I put When True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely love this book. Daisy Jones and the Six literally just came out, and I have not watched it yet, but I will be. I love all of her books, and I'm actually really excited for this one to come out as a movie because this is such a good book. Like the concept of this is so great. Basically, this woman's husband dies, and then so she like moves on, remarries, etc., and then finds out that that husband is actually still alive. That's not a spoiler, that part is on the back. There's obviously so much more that goes into it, but the whole book is following kind of like who does she pick now? Like she has two husbands essentially, and who is she going to stay with? And it kind of just covers like crazy things that you never even think about. Like if that happened to you, like how do you decide? Do you have one true love, or can you live more at the same time? Like I don't know. Next question is a book that I reread the most. I actually don't really reread my books yet. I definitely plan on, there's a bunch of books that I loved that I do want to reread, but I'm just kind of still newer. Like I've only been reading for about a year and a few months now, so I'm still reading books that I haven't read yet. So I'm gonna put It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, only because this is the only book that I have reread within the last year. And I reread this because this was the first book I read in 2022, and then when It Starts With Us came out back in October, I reread this before that so I could like kind of be refreshed on everything, and I annotated it. So yeah, this is the only book so far that I've reread, but there's so many books on my shelf that I definitely want to reread. This is going to be a book from a genre I don't typically read, so I'm going to put A Court of Thorns and Roses because this is a fantasy romance. I read most of ACOTAR series. I'm on the 3rd book. I'm like 70% of the way through. I did really enjoy this, but I think because I stopped and I started reading other books that now it's really hard for me to finish the series. So I really need to finish it. I think I might actually reread this and try and reread the whole series as a whole. And I did really enjoy it, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a huge fantasy reader. I definitely want to get more into fantasy. I have some on my shelf that I just haven't gotten to yet. I just feel like fantasy, like I don't understand the whole like fae and like all that. So I feel like I need to like kind of watch videos on, I don't want to say like summaries, but I feel like that would help me kind of understand what I'm reading a little bit more because I am newer to the fantasy world. Number 9 is a book that deserves all the hype it gets, and that is none other than Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I absolutely adore this book. This is one of the books I want to reread actually because I read this in one sitting last year, and I want to go through and just annotate it, and it's just such a good book. It's basically a childhood friends to lovers, kind of like a second chance romance. It's just amazing. It basically follows Macy and Elliot, and they're friends when they're children obviously, and I think that she lives in like this, or she's coming to visit this vacation home that her dad has, and then Elliot is a next door neighbor, and he like comes in, they like always are in their little closet together reading books, and the whole book is about kids reading books and falling in love with books. It's just so amazing. It's just a comfort read, and it's so good. Number 10 is a book that I usually recommend when asked for a recommendation, and I actually am going to give the Addicted series for this one because again, it's so hard to just pick one singular book. I feel like I have to ask the person a million questions. I'm like, do you like thrillers? Do you like romance? Do you like spice? No spice? Like, it's just such a hard question to answer. But the Addicted series is one of my all-time favorite series, and I feel like I always recommend this because it's just like found family vibes where you really get attached to the characters and the book and the world. And I love a book that has your favorite characters. This one was kind of hard, but I'm picking 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I feel like the characters in this book, like if you've read it, you would understand. I feel like the way that they handle their relationship is just so mature and beautiful. And basically they're both authors and they're writing to each other through their books. And it's kind of like a second chance romance, but the ending, like, I don't, without spoiling it, it's not really a second chance romance, but it also is. It's just beautiful, and I love this book. And again, this has a lot of minority representation, which is amazing, and I loved this. All right, this is going to be a book I wish I could live in, and I'm putting Daisy Jones and the Six for this because I feel like when I read this, it felt like it was a real band, and the characters were all so cool, and I just wanted to like live in this time period with them, and I wanted to travel with them. And it's just such a great like story. So obviously I feel like everyone knows about this book, but it's following Daisy Jones, who joins this band, the Six, and it's just kind of an interview style from a certain person, and it's just amazing. I love it, and I wish I could like literally like be side by side with Daisy in this whole book. All right, this question is a book you thought you would hate, but you ended up loving. This is Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. I didn't think I was gonna like hate this necessarily, but this was the first dark romance book I've ever read, and it is pretty dark, like on this, like the levels of like dark, it's up there. So I probably should have started with like a lesser dark book, but I ended up really loving this, and this led me into reading more dark romance, and now I am a huge fan. So I love this book. This book follows a girl who is going around stealing guys' identities after sleeping with them, and she's on the run, and so she steals Enzo's identity like she does with everybody else, but he ends up catching her and she doesn't realize, and they meet up again and they get on his boat, and when he confronts her they get in a shipwreck, and then they're lost at sea, and there's just so much that goes into it. So it's definitely like an enemies to lovers dark romance as well, because he ends up hating her obviously for her trying to steal his identity. So next question is a book that made you cry. And I wanted to say If He Had Been With Me. I read that on my Kindle, so I don't have it, but I think that's super popular, so I'm gonna try and go to like another one that's not as popular. The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. This book was literally everything to me. I absolutely adore this book with my whole freaking heart. So it's following two different love stories in this book. It's following this girl and her love interest while this girl is trying to finish her grandma's book. Her grandma was a famous author. She passed away, and she's trying to find someone to finish her last book. So we're reading about the grandma's love story as well. And the grandma's love story takes place in war. She is in the military. Her love interest is also in the military. It's obviously very traumatic and sad, but then also following her granddaughter's love story throughout it. He is the guy who's finishing writing her grandma's book. So there's just like so much going on at all times, and the ending, you guys, if you've read this and you want to talk about it, please DM me, because what the heck. Next question is a book you wish you could reread for the first time. So basically you want to reread it so you can forget everything that happens. This is really hard because I read so many good thrillers that I feel like would fit into this category, because it's hard to reread a thriller because you kind of know what's going to happen and it doesn't hit the same. But I'm putting The Silent Patient, which is obviously really, really popular, but this was one of the first thrillers I ever read where I was like, what just happened? Like, amazing, and just made me love thrillers. And I wish I could reread this without knowing what was going to happen, so I can get that like effect again. But also I feel like just so many of the thrillers that I read, a lot of Frida McFadden's thrillers like The Housemaid, Never Lie, those are amazing. So next we have a book, The Kakira Slump. I'm actually gonna put two. So the first one I'm gonna put is the Mind F series, which is a thriller. It's 5 books, but they're really short, so I consider kind of one book. I read it on my Kindle, so I don't have it here, but it's literally amazing if you like kind of a morally gray female character. It's just a great book. It's basically following Lana as she is going through life trying to seek revenge on guys who did something really bad to her in the past. So she's obviously going around killing them, and she ends up falling in love with the FBI agent who is on her case trying to hunt her down. And it's just amazing. Like, I literally binge read all 5 books within, I think, like 1.5 days. I could not stop reading. It was amazing. But the second book I'm going to recommend for this, if you're not into thrillers, my camera cut me off, but I was saying some people are just not into thrillers, which is totally fine. So I'm going to recommend kind of more of a romance, more of a cutesy read. This is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I'm obsessed with this book, first of all, and I will be buying all of her books now because her writing is so cute. But this is basically following 2 characters. We have Alexis, and she is actually an ER doctor, and she meets Daniel one day when her car breaks down in this like kind of small town. He helps her, and basically they kind of like have a really great night together, and she just kind of is acting like she's never acted before. Like she's usually super serious, all about work, etc. She's in an unhappy relationship, and she ends up having just so much fun with this guy and just doing things that she never really usually does. And she kind of, we're just following them as they kind of remain like friends in a way, but it's obviously kind of like friends to lovers. And it's just really cool because she has like all this pressure from her parents and everything to be like the head of surgery and all of this stuff, and she just kind of is realizing that life has more meaning to it than just having the most money and stuff like that. And I feel like this book is giving It Happened One Summer but better. I didn't really love It Happened One Summer, but I know a lot of people do. And kind of that small town, like when the girl is like really rich and not prissy, because she's not very prissy, but and then small town guy who is working really hard, very blue collar, but also collaboration with Grey's Anatomy, because this book, I feel like Abby Jimenez loves Grey's Anatomy, because basically the girl Alexis, her ex-boyfriend, is like the chief of surgery and all this stuff, and it's giving Grey's Anatomy as well. I really enjoyed this, and I feel like a lot of people would, and it was a very easy read, so like if you're not a big reader, I feel like it would keep you hooked. Okay, a book that everyone needs to read. This was really hard, again, because everyone has different opinions, but I'm putting Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, because this is a very cutesy, easy, super easy read. It is YA, so the writing is not hard to read, obviously, but it's also just very cute, and like it feels good. It was cozy, it was warm, so I feel like everyone should read this because it just brightens your mood. I just love this so much. And yeah. Okay, then we have number 18, a book you think would make an amazing movie. I'm putting Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, because I think this would be such a good thriller. Like, this is just an amazing, amazing, amazing book. It's following a couple. Their marriage is kind of a little rocky. The husband actually has, I forget what it's called, and it doesn't say it on the back, but he has something wrong with his eyes where he kind of like, the faces he sees are kind of like morphed a little bit, which is kind of interesting. I don't know, I've never really heard of that. But they go on this vacation trying to kind of like save their marriage, and things get really weird, and then obviously he can't really recognize faces, so it's like extra weird for him, and it's really good. I feel like this would be an amazing thriller. Movie obviously is already a thriller. Then we have a book that I wish everyone would give a shot, even if it's out of their comfort zone, and this is going to be Haunting, Adeline. It's actually going to be the duet, so Haunting and Hunting. Adeline, these books are literally some of my favorite books ever, but this is a very, very dark romance. There's a lot of triggers, so it's hard to kind of recommend to people because you don't know their style, and some people might like read this and be like, what the hell are you reading? Because it's pretty dark stuff, but I actually really enjoyed this. I loved it, and yeah, so I recommend this to someone who wants to try something a little out of their comfort zone, as long as you read the trigger warnings. And finally, the last question is going to be a book that you'll never forget, which is so freaking hard. I feel like I've said that for every question, but I'm going to put Binding 13. This is actually a series though, so I am kind of warping all of those books into this. I just read Binding 13, Keeping 13, and Redeeming 6. No, Saving 6. Redeeming 6 is coming out. I read them all within the past 2 months, and this is just giving me that feeling of the Addicted series, the found family, the tragic like aspects that are happening in it. Like, it just feels so like, I'm obsessed with all the characters, I'm obsessed with the world, and I can't wait for the rest of the books to keep coming out. So I feel like I'll just never forget these books because they just feel so comforting in this like weird way, and I just love them. So this is basically just following Johnny and Shannon as they navigate high school. Shannon comes from a really abusive, toxic household, and she's getting bullied really bad in school, and Johnny kind of takes it upon himself to kind of help save her in a way and save her from being bullied at this new school, and he wants to save her from her really, really abusive household. It's super sad. Like, definitely check trigger warnings because it's so much abuse that goes on in this book, and like tragedy, and it is a sports romance. Johnny is the captain of his team, so there is also that to the book as well. And as you go through the series, it changes perspective. So the first 2 books are about Johnny and Shannon, and now the next 2 books are about Shannon's brother Joey and his love interest, and I'm just obsessed with this series and absolutely love it. All right, you guys, we made it. All of the books I own basically are on the floor in front of me now, and I have to put them back on my shelves, But that is it for the book recommendations tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's different from the videos I typically do, but this is fun because I feel like I've been watching my booktuber friends do this video and I get to like learn a little bit more about them. When you learn, like, it's not just like 1 or 2 of their favorite books. Like, these are like all the books I just mentioned were either 4 or 5 stars for me, which is just fun to show you guys. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and my TikTok and Bookstagram and all of that are in the description box, along with the questions for this tag. I'd love to connect with you guys on there as well, and I will see you guys in my next one.